Hello, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be making this cute little bag inspired by a picture I saw on Pinterest. This is an extremely beginner-friendly tutorial because the only stitches we're going to be using are double crochet and chains. But if you are unfamiliar with the stitches, make sure to check out my ultimate beginner tutorial because I show how to do them in that, and then you can come back here and continue with the tutorial. Starting off with our materials, we have weight for acrylic yarn, a darning needle, scissors, and a 5mm hook. Starting off our first row, we're going to make a slip knot, put our hook in, and then we're going to make a row of foundation double crochets. So chaining 2, yarning over and going into the side 2 loops of the first chain, yarning over, pulling through those 2 loops, yarn over, pull through 1, yarn over, pull through 2, and yarn over, pull through 2. And then for our next one, yarning over, going into the side 2 loops, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 1, pull through 2, pull through 2. And we're going to make this row as wide as you want the bag to be, but technically it's doubled. So we're going to go all the way around both sides with this one row. So make sure that you aren't just doing this width, you're doing the width all the way around the width you want the entire bag to be. And so as you're crocheting, you're going to want to fold it in half and check how wide it is, because this width that I'm showing right now is going to be how wide your actual bag would be. So make sure again that like when you're crocheting this way, you're not like, oh, the bag is going to be this wide, because it's not. It's going to be half of that. Okay, and this is where I'm going to end my row. So clearly this is a lot smaller than my original bag, so feel free to make it as wide as you want it to be, because I kind of have this one as like a tote bag, but then I want this one to be more of like a purse. So it's really flexible, whatever you choose. So now that you've finished the row, you're going to want to fold it in half and make sure that it's flat, and then you can turn it sideways so you can put your hook back into this end. Then you're going to slip stitch on the other side of the end, again making sure that it lays flat, and then you can pull through extra, and then you're going to go to the other side where it's kind of just like open here and you have the end, and you're going to tie the end onto this top corner. So just like with a normal knot, tying it on. So now we have closed rows, so basically each time we're going to go around and then slip stitch into the end of the row and repeat that for each of our rows. For this next one, we are going to start by chaining 2, doing a double crochet into the first stitch, then we're going to chain 1, skip a stitch, and double crochet into the next stitch, making a little gap. And then we're going to chain 1, skip 1, double crochet, and repeat that the entire row, chaining 1 in between each of your double crochets. And then after last stitch, you're going to chain 1 once again, and then slip stitch into the beginning of the row, so the top of the chain. For our next row, we're going to do the same thing. So chaining 2 at the beginning, double crocheting into that first double crochet. But this time, when we chain 1, skip 1, we're always going to be double crocheting into the double crochet. So at this point, we're ignoring the gaps pretty much. We're not going to do anything into the gap. We're going to chain 1, skip the gap, and double crochet into the double crochet from our last row, and repeating that the entire row. And again, after our last double crochet, chaining 1 and then slip stitching into the top chain from the beginning of this row. For this next row, it is going to be a little bit different. We are going to start off with our chain 2, but this time after our first double crochet, we're also going to double crochet into the gap. So when we double crochet into the gap, it means that we're literally just going straight through the gap and double crocheting as if we're going into a stitch, but we're not putting our hook through the actual chain. Then we go into the double crochet and just repeating that the rest of the row. And then for your last stitch, you're going to double crochet into this last gap and then slip stitch into those chains. For our next row, we're going to go back to our gap row, so chaining 2, double crocheting, and then chain 1, skip 1, double crochet, and repeating that chain 1, skip 1, double crochet for the entire row. And then after your last stitch, doing your chain 1 and slip stitching into the chain from the beginning of the row. Then we're going to chain 2, double crochet, and repeat the same thing. Chain 1, skip 1, double crochet, all the way around the entire row. And so for the rest of the bag until it reaches the length you want it to be, we're technically just going to be alternating these mesh rows and these solid stitch rows. I will be changing it a little bit so that it's not always 1 double crochet row and 2 mesh rows, but if you don't want to do it exactly the way I did, it'll work completely fine if you just alternate between these rows for however you want it to look. But then our last row does have to be a little bit different because we're going to be stitching the 2 sides together so it actually closes like the bottom of a bag would. So feel free to adjust the pattern of how you're alternating the rows to however you want it to look, or you can stick with what I'm doing, but either way it'll still work. And after our last double crochet, doing our chain 1, slip stitch into the chains from the beginning of the row, and then chaining 2 to start our next row, double crocheting in the first stitch, and this row is going to be back to our solid stitch row, so doing 1 double crochet into the gap, 1 double crochet into the next double crochet, and repeating that the entire row. And then at the end of the row, doing a double crochet into the last gap, and then slip stitching into the top of those 2 chains. And then for our next row, instead of going back and doing another mesh row, we are going to do another solid row. So, chaining 2, and this time we're just double crocheting into every single stitch because we don't have any gaps to go into this time. Just double crocheting the entire row. And at the end of the row, you're going to double crochet right here, but you're not going to want to double crochet into this spot right here because that was your slip stitch. So that's going to give you an extra double crochet for the row, which means you're technically increasing. So you're just going to skip that slip stitch spot right there and slip stitch into the beginning of your row. Next, we are going to go back to our mesh rows. So chaining 2, double crochet, chain 1, skip 1, double crochet, and repeating that chain 1, skip 1, double crochet around the entire row. And then at the end of the row, doing our last chain 1 and slip stitching into the top of our chain 2. And then our next row is going to also be a mesh row, so chaining 2, double crocheting into the first double crochet, chain 1, skipping our gap and double crocheting into the double crochet, and repeating that chain 1, skip the gap, double crochet for the entire row. And then doing our last double crochet, chaining 1, slip stitching into the top of the chain, and then we're going to chain 2, double crochet into the first double crochet, double crochet once into the gap, and once into the double crochet, and repeating that the entire row. And then doing 1 double crochet into the last gap, slip stitching into our 2 chains, and then we're going to do another solid row. So chaining 2, double crocheting into every single stitch in this row because we don't have any gaps to go into. And then at the end of the row, making sure we go into our last double crochet, but that we don't go into our slip stitch. And then we can slip stitch into the top chain from the beginning of the row. Now I'm going to do my last row before we stitch the 2 sides together. So chaining 2, double crochet in the first stitch, and we're going to do a mesh row. So chaining 1, skip 1, double crochet, and repeating that the entire row. And after our last double crochet, chaining 1 and slip stitching into the chain. And for our next row, we are going to be doing single crochets to stitch it together. So we're going to start by chaining 1, and you kind of want to line up those gaps that you had in your double crochets. So if you can see, I have the double crochet from the front and the double crochet from the back panel lined up next to each other. So we're going to do 1 single crochet into the chain between this, and you either can get through as many loops as you want, or you can just go through 2 loops. It doesn't really matter, it just kind of depends on your preference. So I'm kind of just going to pick up 1 loop from both sides and single crochet. And then into the double crochet, the easiest way to do 1 loop from both is to get the one that's closest to you on the front and the one that's furthest from you in the back. And then make your single crochet. Then do 1 in the chain in between. You can see there I kind of picked up 2. Really doesn't make a difference. And we're just going to repeat that the entire row. And it is pretty important to make sure that you keep them lined up, because if you get too far off, then the bag is going to end up like stitched together unevenly, and so even when you're wearing it, it's going to be like lopsided. And then when you get to the corner, you're going to do 1 into your double crochet, 1 into the chain, and then kind of just do 1 into the edge here, going through both sides, single crochet, and you can chain 1 and cut off your work and pull it through. And then our last step is to do our straps. So the easiest way to start is to go on your one side that has the end here, and you're going to go 1 stitch over from the middle on both sides. So putting my hook in here, we're going to tie on the yarn. Then you're going to put your hook through, grab onto your yarn, and then chain 2. Then you're going to do a double crochet into that middle spot right here, and a double crochet right after. Then we're going to chain 2, turn our work, do a double crochet into the middle, and then we're going to do a double crochet into the top of our chain 2. And so each row of the straps, you're going to chain 2, do a double crochet into the middle stitch, and then double crochet into the last stitch, which is going to be your chain. So a lot of the times you're not going to be crocheting into chains in general, but for the straps here, you do want to be crocheting into the chains. And you're just going to repeat that until the straps reach the length that you want them to be. And it doesn't really matter where in the chain you put your stitch, because if you try and go through the proper 2 loops, you definitely can do that, but there's no need to necessarily. I usually just go through whatever top 2 loops there are, and then I leave the 3rd loop out of my hook. And so once the strap has reached the length that you want it to be, you're gonna have to find where the edge is on the other side and line up your strap with those 3 stitches. And so an easy way to do that is looking at what middle stitch is on the side, and then once you get to these last rows, it just lines up with this double crochet here, and then you're gonna be like right here pretty much. Then what you're gonna do is chain 1, and then you're gonna slip stitch through your side and then through the side that's on the bag, in your middle stitch in the bag, slip stitch, and then in your chain in the bag, slip stitch, and then you can chain 1 and cut off your work. And then now all we have left is weaving in our ends. So the nice thing about this bag is you only have 4 ends to weave in, and I hate weaving ends, so that is amazing. The easiest way to put the yarn on your needle is to lay it over the top, pinch it and pull it off, and then wiggle it through the eye of the needle. Makes it easier to pull through. And then you're going to want to go through the stitches, going down a little bit, just making like a random pattern that you're going through. And then you can cut it off. And then I'm just gonna repeat that with all my other ends that I have left. And then for this last one where you have 2 ends right next to each other, the only thing I would recommend is that you don't put both of them in the same spot. So like if I start this one going this direction, I wouldn't also put this one going this direction. It just ends up getting a little bulky sometimes and making it difficult to tell if you're actually weaving through the bag or if you're weaving through the yarn that came from your other end, which means it's like not as secure pretty much. And there we go. We are completely done with our little bag. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you have any questions, make sure to let me know down below and I will do my best to help. If you make one of these, please make sure to tag me when you post it because I would love to see it, and I can also repost it on my story so more people can see it. Make sure to check out my Depop for crochet stuff I'm selling. And otherwise, yeah, thank you so much for watching and I will see you next time. Bye! Actually made no sense, but whatever.